Okay, so hopefully we're live again for the second try. So apologies for that, folks. A few technical problems, but we always surmount them in the end and move forward, which of course is good. So I think Jane's just going to check the sound quality in the video from the next room because she sat behind me or to the side of us effectively. And for anyone that joins, if you just can give us a quick thumbs up that you can hear the sound okay and the video looks good, and then we'll be good to get started. So we'll just wait for a moment or two for a few people to get logged in, which means I can drink my cup of tea, which is always good. Okay. So I think things look better from my perspective here. Sarah's saying it sounds better, which is good, because we basically we've got about 3 different Wi-Fi hotspots to use here. We've got the kind of site that we're on, which is what we was connected to, and then we can hop over to my phone, which is a gift-gaff hotspot, and then we've also got another one on Vodafone. So covering basically every different kind of mobile phone connection and the local site Wi-Fi. So if that sounds good, thank you, Tesla. And Gaz, good to see you guys on. Perfect. So it's worth just spending a few more minutes to get things right, really. Otherwise, obviously, the sound gets to be choppy, the video gets to be choppy. I look bad enough normally on camera without the video and the sound chopping out. So we'll go for the best result that we can get effectively, which is cool. So this week, so it is August, 4th of August 2025. How the time flies by. And I think there's probably interesting weather all over the world at the moment, or there seems to be. Every time we look at the news, there seems to be another weather catastrophe going on somewhere. And I think certainly in the UK, I know that Scotland are having kind of heavy winds and rain at the moment. And some of that is kind of backlashing down through the other part of the country, although it hasn't been too bad where we are, luckily. So it's all good. Okay, Karen Ranger had a notification, but had a hell of a time finding you. Well, hopefully, Karen, it was worth the journey. so well done for that. Well done for continuing to keep going. And I think this is the thing, isn't it? There's so many methods now to find people. I know that we're trying to stream across different channels to YouTube and Facebook, and we've got Instagram and recently TikTok as well. So there's a whole myriad of social channels that we're trying to kind of manage and keep things on, because we do appreciate that people are on different channels. People like to view things in different places. So we're trying to kind of make sure that our content, which is obviously quite important from Chen's perspective, to be kind of migrated out to the wider community, really, is available on channels that people are using and listening to. So effectively, everything sort of ends up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok now, and of course, we're on StreamYard today. So there's a whole kind of raft of tech to try and get sorted, really, when we do these podcasts, which I think we seem to be managing quite well with, hopefully. And obviously, you guys have found us, and Karen's put some legwork in, so thanks for doing that. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about this week, Jane and I normally sit down, have a quick chat before Monday, normally Monday morning, talk about what we're going to talk about. We kind of loop Chen into that conversation. Quite often he has an opinion on something that he wants to talk about, and that's kind of what we tend to go with, since effectively, as most of you realise, Chen is the boss, really. So if the boss says this is what we're talking about. But this week, Chen said, well, what would you guys like to talk about? And more importantly, really, what would Jane like to talk about and bring to the table? Because Jane's obviously picking up all of the email and correspondence. So she's dealing with the day-to-day conversations, emails, questions, when people have had sessions done, the questions that come back. And of course, before people have had sessions or booked sessions, there's also people with questions before that, prior to their appointments and things as well. So hopefully most of that detailed conversation is available. We try and make it self-service, really, on the website, because, again, we're aware that lots of our clients are outside of our time zones. So if we're fast asleep in bed, then obviously somebody has a self-service view of the website, and they can find the answers to the things they want to know. And also on the website, we've got a chat bot as well that's been loaded with a big document to answer, hopefully, most questions that people have. So if you've got some time on your hands, or you've got some questions, or you're a practitioner, one of our practitioners, of course, as well, with the SRA, and you've got questions or things you can't remember, then you could go to the chat bots, because hopefully on our website and the SRA website, there's a chat bot on both that has been loaded with a lot of content that should be able to help you. So one of the things we talked about today, Chen didn't really have anything particularly. Jane said, I have something I want to talk about, and it's why we don't give out too much information in our reports. So we're very aware that lots of people in a kind of spiritual arena have different ways of kind of sending reports and detailing things and talking to their clients and customers. And I guess everyone does that in different ways. And I know that for you guys like sort of Gaz and Nadine that have been on the SRA training, you'll know the answer to this already. But kind of good to go over it again, I guess, to a certain degree. So if we think about the things that we do, so we're basically offering spiritual help, healing, cleansing, and clearing really to clients. That's our kind of core service, effectively. So then the way that we do that, of course, is that our spirit guides, so my spirit guide Chen, connects to a client. Basically, he's looking at the field, the etheric field, and they're looking to find problems, negative problems from a spiritual perspective, and then to kind of simplify things, to obviously resolve those problems, basically, and bring people back to a kind of state of sovereignty. So I was going to say hi to Nadine, Karen, and Yaz, and Tesla, and Sarah as well, of course. So that's the kind of general gist. So we've kind of got a lot of spiritual interference with someone, and that can look in different ways again. And the way that we use the reports, obviously, we're kind of giving you narration back in terms of what we find. So if we think about things like negative entities, there are different types of entities. Some of them are very easy from our perspective to remove, some of them not so easy. And then we've got kind of discarnate spirits. So people that, like us, that have been alive and then died, and when those people have died, if they haven't gone to light or moved across to spirit, as we would kind of explain it, then they become earthbound. So they kind of stay in that spiritual vibration, but they can connect to people. So when we look at the report and we say we found 2 earthbounds or discarnate spirits connected to you, that means that we've got 2 energies connected into your field, basically, and you've been effectively moving around with those energies connected to you. And of course, they change your thought process, they change your conscious awareness, they affect you quite negatively. So even if it was someone that's good in your family, it could have been your grandmother or your grandfather that passed, that didn't go to light, didn't kind of cross over, different terminology for different people, but is then connected to your field, you're going to basically pull them around. And of course, for them to be in your field, they're going to be connected onto you effectively, energetically. So they're going to siphon some of your energy to start with, so you'll feel quite fatigued and tired most of the time. And then whatever thought process you have, you're going to be overlaying their conscious awareness on top of yours. So when you start to think things, you'll think different things than you did before, because of course now you've got another spiritual consciousness or conscious energy connected into your etheric field that's going to change your thought process. So you can see having discarnate spirits connected to you isn't particularly good. And of course, it's not good for the spirit either, because after a while they become so imbued into your field, they can't leave. So they're effectively trapped then inside your kind of container, and that could continue right through until your death, at which point, obviously, the physical body disappears, and then they get the opportunity probably to disconnect and leave. So you can see that people that have got discarnates or earthbounds connected to them have quite a big problem. So if we just look at that aspect of it, then we kind of move on to things like curses. Again, curses come from different people, different places. At the outset, a curse is kind of a negative thought, negative intention. But again, on your report, if we were to write things like, you had 5 curses and they came from your mother or your grandmother or your sister or someone quite close to you in your family, that tends to create more problems than it resolves, really, because of course, this is why choosing the right level of information to provide on a report is very important, because you can quite easily make things worse for people. And what we're about helping people and moving people back into a sovereign space in a positive way. So from my perspective, the kind of best report would be, you booked a session, we provided a spiritual intervention, basically on your behalf with the spirit guide team. Everything that we found has now been cleared and resolved. And basically, how do you feel? If you feel good and positive, that's kind of all you need to know, really. And that kind of frees you up to move forward with your life. But if we give you a very, very detailed report and go into all of the negative things that we found entities attached to you, we found discarnate spirits, and your granddad's still with you, your sister's cursing you, and then we look at other aspects too. We could give you a whole list of things, but the more information we give you, potentially, the more negative that kind of healing and cleansing becomes, because of course your vibration starts to come down. And this is something that we learned over years. When I used to work with Terry, first of all, Terry wanted to provide a whole host of very detailed narration back to the client. And he used to do that verbally. So him and I would speak. He'd record the session, basically, with a kind of voice recorder on his end. And then he'd basically give the client the voice recording of the things that we found and the things that we talked about, which kind of sounds good because obviously it's authentic, it's real, it's good at the time. But what used to happen was, for many people that had a lot of intrinsic problems that were quite negative, they would then be asking lots of questions straight back. So as soon as Terry sent the audio report, he'd get a question back along the lines of, well, why was my grandmother connected to me? Why didn't she move over? Can you assist me? How long have those curses been in my field? You know, what's the cursing about? Where does it come from? So you can see, in a way, the more information you provide, the more questions come up as part of the kind of session, but which isn't a problem, because obviously answering questions is good and fine. The bigger problem is it pushes the client into a very negative space. And then, of course, they become quite angry. Some of them became very, very fearful and angry when we provided a lot of detailed information. And Terry learned quite quickly that what we found was, again, Terry was a doctorate, so he came from academia. He was an academic, so he was very good, basically, at kind of looking at the data set and working with the data set. And when he realised that we were actually causing lots of questions, quite a lot of negativity, quite a lot of negative feelings and emotions for people, kind of realised that we had a responsibility not to do that. And it certainly wasn't very good from a cleansing perspective to the actual clearing and to the healing. So what he did then was the opposite. We just basically sent reports to say, thank you very much for the session. Basically, you've been cleared. How do you feel? And of course, the feedback was the opposite. Then people would message Terry back and say, wow, I woke up this morning. I feel so much better. My head's clear. I've got clarity of thought. The heaviness in my chest is gone. So he'd start to see this kind of whole raft of positive emotional feelings from the clearings that we did. So it was very clear that giving too much information actually pushed the client backwards on their healing journey, but then giving the least amount of information that we possibly could was actually really positive. And obviously I've been doing this for kind of like 20 years, as has Jono, and plenty of other kind of healers and people in this field. And we talk, obviously, and we kind of came to the same conclusions that, you know, different clients want different things. Some clients want to have a very, very detailed report, and whether they can then deal with the information is another thing, because it pushes client responsibility back to them. Other people, in fact, we had one today, one of the clearings I did this morning, actually sat at the table with Jane. Jane looked up and said, have you done this clearing for this person? I said, yep, it's done. Hasn't been sent yet. It's still in the draft folder, because we do them all first and send them at the right times. So effectively, Jane said, can you not send it? Because she's actually expressed in her email that she's very, very emotionally sensitive and she doesn't want to hear any negativity. And of course, we normally detail what we find. So we detail things like, you know, one entity attached to a field, 2 discarnate spirits, 3 curses, interdimensional parasites, portals. So there's a whole list of things that we find, as do people that do SRT, and certainly as we do from an SRA perspective. And my reports are kind of set up with those, you know, that template effectively. So that meant we needed to go into template and take out all of the detail and just change that to a kind of big paragraph to say, as per your request, you know, we're not going to basically tell you what we found, but just to let you know the session's been complete. The session was successful. We've cleared and removed everything in your field that was negative, basically, and you can now effectively kind of go about your day without having to read the nitty-gritty about the negative things that were connected to you that were causing you problems, because this person had quite a few problems, obviously, as most people tend to. So again, these reports, you know, there is a responsibility in terms of what we give and how much we give. Certainly when John and I teach SRA and we teach the practitioners how to do this from a Spirit Release Academy perspective, you know, they format their own reports. So each practitioner decides how they're going to write the reports, what information they're going to push back. And again, the same with us. So I've certainly learned over the years that 2 ways to look at things, really. Too much information causes more problems and pushes someone backwards on their healing journey. The least amount of information is literally the session was completed, successful, and how do you feel? That would be the kind of best report from my perspective, because we don't really give anything away. And a lot of the information, it's worth remembering, most people don't understand. So when we talk about the things that we find, we've been doing this for 20 years, we know this area intricately. And I think Johnny tends to say there's like 20 different levels that we look at. So we're looking for entities, discarnate spirits, portals, curses, interdimensional parasites, the list goes on and on. So we look for every one of those as a frequency band that the spirit guides need to scan and find negative things and clear and remove. Now, for most people that book the sessions, they've got no idea what we're talking about. So when we send a report back and we say, we closed a portal in your etheric field, I'm pretty sure that 9 out of 10 probably have got no idea what that would mean, how that would affect them, what could possibly be coming and going in and out through a portal, how that portal was created in their field and why it's there, how long it's been there. So again, you can see with just one of those things, of that kind of list of 20 different frequencies that we scan, there's probably 10 to 15 questions. So if you looked across all 20 layers, 20 frequencies, and said most people probably could come up with 10 questions based upon each thing that we do, effectively you'd be looking at kind of 10 times 20 basically. So you'd be looking at kind of 200 odd questions coming back. So as practitioners, if we're working through reports every day, if we're doing 5, 6, 10 reports, if you had 200 questions come back from each person you do them for, then of course it's unsustainable for us to be able to answer those questions. And most people probably aren't going to understand the actual information that goes back anyway, really. And that, I think, is the key takeaway from my perspective, is that for most people, when I go to get things, if I go take my car to the garage, I trust the garage. I basically give them the car keys and say, there you go, there's my car. I've got this problem with it, or it's in for service. You guys go and do what you do. This is your job, your expertise. You sort my car out, and then all I want to do basically is turn up, pay the bill, have a cup of coffee, have a bit of a laugh for 5 minutes with the mechanics, and then drive the car off. I'm not really interested in the problems they had with the car, how they needed to fix it, where the parts came from, when the parts came, were they available. There's a whole load of questions I can ask them about my car, but I'm not that interested. What I'm interested in is, does the car now go, and is the problem that I took it there for resolved? And I think this is how we kind of sort of need to see things from a spiritual perspective for most people. Certainly people that are interested in the work that we do. Obviously there's a whole raft of conversation and questions, and there's a whole raft of research that we're looking to do, certainly from an academy perspective anyway, but certainly from a spirit guide perspective, the guides are basically in there clearing negativity, clearing the field, and most people actually find that they sleep better not knowing what was wrong with them. And again, we've had numerous cases of people that go into a fearful state. If we told you that you've got maybe a demonic entity or something like that connected, first thing they're going to do is panic and worry and go into this kind of negative spiral. Is another one going to come? How do I protect myself from them? How do I keep myself clear? Where did I pick that up from? How did it attach to me? Again, you can see there's a whole load of questions that come forward, and that person's probably not going to sleep particularly well. Whereas for the client that we say, do you know what? We've done your session. Everything's been cleared. You should be feeling on top of the world. How do you feel? And they say, yep, I feel much better. You don't need to know what was there. It's all been resolved and cleared. And that's why you come to us, because everyone that does this work, that works in the academy and for the academy, are professionals. This is what we do. And if you look at the SRA practitioners, they've all invested a lot of money to do the training, and they've probably done, John and I reckon there's probably 100 hours of training that goes in to train and certify each practitioner. So each one of those practitioners that you see on the SRA website as a certified practitioner that's currently on our website has done 100 hours probably of training. There's a lot of theory. They've done tests. They've actually done live cases. So these are very professional people now that are kind of top of the game. And that's what we wanted to make sure. And of course, these are the people you can trust. So if you book a session with them, you're booking a session with what we consider to be the best people in the world that do this type of work, because the training is so rigorous and we cover so many different things. So if we look at kind of SRT, spirit release therapy in the past, it was just kind of, can you remove a spirit? So most mediums that can talk to spirit obviously have telepathy turned on. They can talk to a spirit. They can generally move them on. So most mediums will tell you, yeah, I can kind of do what you guys do. Well, yeah, you can. you can move a discarnate spirit on because you're a medium, so that's great. But you're not doing what we do, because we're looking at another 19 frequencies of other things to scan, clear, and remove in someone's field. And that's why it took Terry and I and Chen 10 years to come up with the protocol that we use, because we weren't just talking to a spirit and moving them on. We were looking for everything that was negative in a client's etheric field in different frequencies and working out how to clear and remove those things and how to seal the field afterwards and put things back together. So there's an awful lot of time and effort and work that Terry did as a kind of doctor, a PhD level doctor from an academic background, to kind of come up with this protocol with myself and Chen. So our protocol is very, very extensive, and it's not that we just move spirits on, because we do that, but we do that as one of our 19 things that we do. So you can see the whole kind of concept is very, very different. And for those guys like Suki that's just joined, and I can see Shell's here as well, which is good. So good to see you folks. You know, it's a big kind of learning curve, really. It's quite intense training. So I was going to move to some... Oh, John is here as well. Good to see you, mate. We have to take responsibility for the words that we use and share. And that's the thing, as a practitioner, we do have responsibilities, and it's something that you know, I take very, very kind of, well, a very responsible method of choosing what we say to people and how we help people, because we know if we get things wrong, people go into a kind of healing crisis. So we need to be careful about words. We need to be careful about narration and how we talk to people. And ultimately, we need to be authentic and work with integrity. And this is the whole thing. This work is all about integrity and truth. And of course, we're not doing the work. The spirit guides are doing the work for us. So we need to just make sure that we're holding the connection to the guides, and it's the guides that kind of come in and do that work effectively. So there is a huge responsibility for the practitioners to get things right. And this is why our training program with SRA is so long and so intensive, because we want people to be doing the right things with the right level of integrity. And of course, as practitioners too, it tends to weed out people that aren't, because if people come on the training and they're not coming in with the right ethics, the right ideas, the right values, they get found out pretty quickly and generally get weeded out of the kind of the team. So we kind of know who is going to be authentically correct and good, and who kind of doesn't really. So Charles saying she doesn't mind the questions, as it means our reports get tweaked, that's the whole point, just continually tweaking the reports. I tweak my reports still. In fact, I was working on my report this morning, actually tweaking something else. So after 20 years, we're still tweaking reports, which is good, because we should be working in that kind of continual improvement process. And I think that's one of the things that we, from the spiritual perspective, need to do, is we need to adapt to change. Things do change energetically. We need to be able to change our methods, and we need to be able to tweak things, as Sean said, really. And also the clients, you know, some clients are learning, they can have more information, and for those clients that don't understand the subject or don't really want to get involved with the content, they don't need to. Taking the car to the garage is the classic conversation or analogy, really. So Shell said it's been a learning curve. Sometimes I forget not everyone understands what we do. I know that's the thing, Shell. Most people, in fact 90%, don't understand what we do. That's the whole thing, really. And that's why, you know, Chen and Terry used to then say, as part of their research, Terry's question back to his clients, you know, once we'd done a session for research, was, how do you feel? And they'd say, what did you do? And Terry would say, it doesn't matter what we did. How do you feel? Do you feel better? Do you feel lighter? How's your thought process, clarity of mind? You tell me how you feel. So once you've told me how you feel, then if it's positive and good, the session's worked. We don't really need to tell you what we did. We can tell you if you want to, but potentially it puts you back. But we don't really need to tell you. We just need to say, you put the car in for service, we've serviced it, and you've got a nice, shiny, clean car now with the engine topped up with oil. It'll run better, and it's going to be exactly as you need it to be. So it's just thinking about things in a different way, I guess, really. So Pink's asking, why do these entities want human energy? What do they gain from it? Which is a good question. So basically, entities, if you think about us with cows, we as humans farm cows, basically. So cows are in a field, humans wander in that field, basically round them up, send them off to the dairy, or to be milked generally, if we're talking about dairy herd. So those cows are put into machines, all the milk sucked off them because they're pregnant, obviously. And that cycle continues, but the cow's got no idea really what's going on effectively. But we as humans use their output milk to make milk, obviously, cheese, dairy products, other things. So effectively, these entities are the same. They exist in a different frequency to our physical one, but they can connect to our field and they need to assimilate energy. But negative entities vibrate at a very low frequency. So they're in the kind of anger, fear, rage kind of frequency band. So if you sort of think of two bands, sort of happiness and love and positivity is a high frequency band. Anger, rage, negativity is a low frequency band. They sort of live in that low frequency and they can't come up to a high frequency band because it's not where they vibrate. So they're living in this very negative place. So of course they're attaching to people that have a negative vibration. So if you're in a state of fear, anger, negativity, these entities can assimilate your energy, so they can connect to your field and basically pull the energy from you. And that's kind of their substance. That's what keeps them alive. So they're like us with cows. We milk cows continually because we want their product, milk and cheese. These negative entities live in this very low frequency, and to assimilate energy into their field, they need to find low frequency to do that. Of course, people as humans, and not just humans, of course, also animals. So we tend to forget quite often, and Pink's made quite a good point, I think, from that perspective, that animals that are going through pain or fear, or you know, a tiger is chomping on a gazelle or something, that gazelle's going to be in pain and fear. That's still a low frequency of vibration, an energetic vibration. These entities can suck and kind of suck from and kind of vampire to a certain degree. So animals, as much as us, are being connected to by these low-level negative entities and assimilated energetically. So if you think about it that way, we're just food for a different type of species, really, just that we don't see them. So because we have a very kind of narrow frequency band, we know that we've kind of got infrared on one end of the frequency band, sort of low, and as we go up the frequency band, we get up into ultraviolet, and then obviously sort of white light, and then past that. So we know that our sort of visible spectrum is a very small band, so we can only see things that exist in that frequency. But we know that outside that band, we've got infrared, which we can't see, and we know that we've got ultraviolet at the other end that we also can't see. But we know that if someone has an ultraviolet light, obviously that can be seen, and if someone's got an infrared light, that can be seen too. So again, these entities are living in a different vibratory frequency that we can't see them physically, but we can connect to them. So mediums, psychics, people that are telepathic, people that are very sensitive to energy can feel them in the field. If I'm in bed at night and a negative entity walks in the room, I feel the room go cold. I can feel the vibration change. I can feel a very negative, fear-based energy moving into that field. So I kind of know that there's something stood next to me that's not particularly good. I can't see them with my physical eyes, but I know they're there, and therefore I can reach out and talk to them. And generally, I don't ever bother doing that anymore. I just speak to Chen and say, can you clear the, can you perform an intervention and just clear what's walked in the room? And then they're gone in a second. So kind of thinking of it in that way, really, is that, again, humans are just another food, effectively, for a different entity that we don't see. And of course, those entities will also be probably food for something else, because that's how the whole kind of food chain works. If you look at the planet, really, everything exists on something else. So every single animal, fish, bird is eating something generally, apart from obviously vegans and stuff, but most animals eat another animal to survive. That's kind of the lifestyle, and it's the kind of the purpose of that species, effectively. So as Pink's saying, humans aren't at the top. No, they're not at the top, and I think there are a lot of other things well above us, more than likely, really, just that those things are quite clever and they vibrate in different frequencies, and we don't generally concur with them. But of course, people do, and they've been talked about. If you look at the pyramids, you know, all of the like the ancient architecture around the planet depicts different entities, you know, with bird-like faces or all sorts of things that you can see aren't human-looking, but they're kind of, or we're subservient to them, I guess. You know, you see lines, the Egyptian pyramids show lines of humans sort of small down the bottom. Then you see these big entities with these bird faces and other things that were obviously other entities at the time. And the people that drew those things on the pyramids obviously saw what they saw. So they were drawing what they could see. And they could see effectively the concepts of, this is where we get the concepts of kind of giant energies, I guess. And also like the David and Goliath stories probably that come from sort of biblical times probably represent what was going on in the planet, or what people did see. And again, a lot of these entities are probably still here and around, I believe, just that we don't see them with our physical eyes. So hopefully that kind of gives a quick explanation. I've still gone off the trail there, really. But so this whole session was why we're very careful what we share from a finding perspective. So hopefully that kind of covers really and answers that for most people. So it's all about bringing people back to a sovereign space. That's kind of what we do. That's what all of our practitioners do from an SRA perspective. It's what we're here to do. It's a case from my perspective of clients that invoke us to work on their behalf, invoke a specialist practitioner that has the right knowledge and training to do the work, and you give them a responsibility to go and clean your field, clear what's there, bring you back to a sovereign space, and then you should feel a huge difference. Because for most people, I would say probably most of our clients, it's probably the first time in their life they've ever been sovereign. So I imagine most people are not sovereign day to day through most of their life. And when we actually perform one of these interventions and we clear the field, we bring them back to sovereignty. So it's probably the first time they actually feel their own energy, their own thoughts. There is no overlay of negativity, overlay of negative thoughts, and all of the things that kind of go with that from that perspective. So it's something that we're trying to promote, and all of the SRA practitioners kind of have heard the call. They're all in the same place as we are. We're all trying to get this information out to the rest of society, really, that spiritual sovereignty is very, very important. And for people to feel happy, people to have a positive life without any negative interference, you have to bring yourself back to sovereignty. And of course, you can't do that from a physical perspective. It's a spiritual perspective and spiritual work. And therefore, you need spiritual practitioners and people to do that for you. And this is, I think, where hopefully we're starting to wake up this client base that, the cost of these appointments is very, very small across the world to book an SRA practitioner that can bring you back to a place that you've never been and will resolve a whole host of problems that you probably have had, and certainly to change your mindset. And also, of course, your families, because again, if you come back to sovereignty, there's no negative energy around your space that's influencing or providing interference in your life. But of course, the rest of your family will still have things attached to them. So trying to bring families back to a sovereign space is the key journey, really, for us, I think, because that's the biggest change. As soon as the family is sovereign and all the children are protected and safe, then the adults and parents normally understand what's happened, what's going on, and they're then kind of on the hook, really, to sort of train or teach their children. And I think spiritual sovereignty is something that should be being taught in schools, and there's probably good reasons why it's not being taught, because it doesn't really align with the social outlook very well, because of course it's about people being responsible for their own energy, responsible for their own thoughts, responsible for themselves. And we look around the planet every day and we see all of these people with very severe mental health problems, doing very severe things to other people, and just about most of them will probably have some sort of negativity attached to them, some sort of interference basically that could be the problem, or certainly will be exasperating the problem. And that, I think, is the key thing. Every time we watch TV, every time I turn on the news and I see people that have done terrible things, and I think, wow, if we could have just got to them and cleared them first, that it would be a different story. And of course, it affects us all. If we're walking down the street, even if we're spiritually sovereign, and we're whistling away and our thoughts are our own and we're pretty happy about ourselves and happy about our life, it doesn't stop someone coming the other way with a machine gun or an axe or something and causing a problem. So from that perspective, we do need to sort of really bring people back to that way. Sorry, did you want me? Oh, okay. Yes, I'm doing that now. The boss is outside the door. Don't forget Chen. And now I got carried away with the conversation because I'm quite passionate about this conversation, and obviously explaining the background behind it as well, really. So Pink's just saying that she's wearing black obsidian, which is effective to shield your awful interference. Yep, perfect. Anything black from a crystal perspective is good, really. And obviously Orgonite is particularly good. It creates a huge big vortex around it that pushes back negativity. So, which is why we kind of make our pendants and pyramids and all things that we do, because we see the effect they have on the negative interference side. Anyway, with no further ado, let's get Chen in, because obviously Chen worked with Terry basically for 10 years as part of this kind of protocol that we developed, so he can give his kind of perspective, I guess, really on the same conversation. So what we're trying to do is talk about the reports that we give, the way we feedback things to people, and the feedback we're providing, and why we do what we do. So let's get Chen in to see what he has to say. Okay, so with that, I will hand over. Good day to you all. Obviously, my name is Chen, Andrew's principal guide and surgeon. So firstly, thank you for joining this weekly podcast. I always like to see the interest level and, of course, the people that join, that can join. We do understand, of course, that for some people this could be part of your working day. Therefore, Andrew makes sure that these recordings are available on catch-up, so you can watch them and you can subscribe to them in your time. And this is very important, really, from our perspective, that information that is shared, information that's percolated out to the general public, people can assume it in any way they need to on and from any platform, of course. And again, this is one of our dictates to the team, if you like, that we work with young Andrew and John too, from an SRA perspective, have a whole list of agenda points that we continually give them on things that we want to happen. So they're continually being pushed to make sure that this information that we think is so positive and life-changing, and of course it has a greater purpose when we talk about the planet, needs to go out to more and more people. So the more methods of delivering the information, then of course the better, because we cover a wider and a larger audience, which is imperative really from our perspective. So moving on to the conversation today, I said to young Andrew and Jane this morning, what would you like to discuss? Obviously I choose generally the topics on a weekly basis, but this week I wanted to see what they would come up with. And I had noticed that young Jane is quite often repeating herself continually with the correspondence, the email replies that go back to people. And of course, repeating yourself repeatedly is not particularly conducive to productivity. So it's something I wanted to talk about. And obviously the reports that go out from everyone, so anyone that works with us, anyone that's working in this area, and of course I was working for, it was over 10 years actually, even though Andrew says 10 years, there was a time before that with young Terence. So we were connected to him before their starting point together as two people. But obviously there's a 10-year span, certainly, that I was working with Andrew and Terence together. And Terence obviously had the job, basically, of looking at the information that was provided from a spiritual perspective from ourselves, from a non-physical energy or entity that's performing interventions on behalf of yourselves and clients. This is the information that we're percolating through, and Terence had the job to research that information, to document it, and also, of course, to deliver it, because he was delivering, remember, this information into medical science. That was one of his remits. He was expected to take information from the research that we did together as a team. He would then document it, and he was then on the cuff, really, from our perspective, to deliver that into medical science, and of course to wake up the general populace. So it's a very big ask for one person, and you now see, certainly with the Spirit Release Academy, that there's a whole team of people doing what young Terence tried to do himself. So you must remember that he had a huge mountain, as he used to say, to climb. And we used to laugh at times, because I would say to him, it really is a huge mountain from your perspective, and we really do need to start to make ingress into this mountain. So when we look at the information that was provided over those 10 years, we would scan, or I primarily would scan, the field of a human being, and we would look through every single frequency band. Now, can you imagine how many frequency bands there are? The human energetic vehicle is very complicated. And when you think about your DNA, you know that your DNA is a very complicated set of chemical structures for people to review. And we know that computers are used to process DNA and to look through DNA. So we had a very huge mountain to climb too, from a spiritual perspective. We were looking through each frequency band to find negativity and how it was attached and where it was attached. And then once we'd found things, we needed to work out how we could detach them and remove them. So again, there are lots and lots of different frequencies that we worked through over the 10 years that we're discussing. And what we found was the major things. So we looked for the quick wins, really, we could see an entity connected into the back of someone's head. We know where they connect. We knew how they would connect. We could see the frequency that they would come in on generally and connect. And also we then obviously work through the process of working out how to disconnect them. With many of these entities that are connected to people that are schizophrenic or hearing voices, we don't just simply ask them to leave and they leave. It's not quite as easy as that. So of course we need to find all of the energetic vibrations that have amalgamated themselves into the person's etheric field, and we start to pull and disconnect each one. And of course, from a timeline perspective, this is quite time consuming. Not from your time perspective, but obviously from our time perspective. We don't have time to worry about per se, but of course there is still the concept that a job may take some time to do. So we have to do these things quite quickly to stop them reattaching. So this was obviously the work that we did. And obviously young Terence was part of that process, as was young Andrew, and the information was catalogued and documented by both of them at the time. And this is what we found. Of course, we found that the people that had very negative intrusion into their field would have been experiencing a very negative life, hearing voices, intrusive thoughts, negative feelings, lots of anger, rage, probably lots of sexual energy, but in a negative way too, or they would be sexual predators effectively. So there was a whole list of things that we realised and assimilated quite quickly. And when we sent that information back to the client, we, from the spiritual perspective, would watch. And as soon as the client opened those reports, or as young Andrew said, to start with, it was an audio report as opposed to a documented written narrative report. So they would listen to the audio report and we'd see their frequency go straight down. And we used to say to each other, myself and some of the members of my team, this is not very good. We've cleared some, we've brought their energy up. As soon as they've read the reports, their energy has gone straight back down again. So we've actually gone backwards. Many would become quite angry. And of course, many problems, as you know, you're all friends, you work in groups, spiritual groups and soul groups. So there are people in your groups that are probably working against you, certainly from a thought perspective. If you're doing particularly well for yourself, there will be people around you that will smile at you and say how wonderful it is that you're doing well. But as soon as you turn your back, they're thinking negative thoughts, or jealousy creeps in, or other negative emotions. And of course, those negative emotions then connect to you again, cord into your field and change your vibration in a negative way. So this is where we got to the point that we realized very quickly that these very detailed reports, for most people, were actually quite a negative way to reflect the information back to the client. And then, of course, young Terry had the next dictate was to basically just provide confirmation that the session has been booked and intervention from a spiritual perspective on our behalf has been originated and succeeded and concluded. And that's all they need to know. They don't need to know the ins and outs of what we did, what we found and how we did things. All we need to know now is the feedback. What's the feedback? Do they feel better or do they not feel better? Because like everything in human life, it has to be quantified, but quantified simply. So if you say to someone, I'm going to do something, I'm going to cut your hair, that person needs a haircut. So they sit in a chair, you cut their hair, you say, do you like the haircut? And they say, yes, it's wonderful. So that is a positive feedback from the haircut. If they said, no, the haircut's not positive, I don't like it, then of course that would be deemed to be a negative experience, a negative haircut. And we wanted to make sure that from an academic perspective, Dr. Palmer was able to cover the research from one end to the other. And then we need to meet in the middle. So we need to create a report that is full of integrity and truth, resonating with the right frequency, providing the right information, but not too detailed, but information that is understandable by the client. There's no point in us giving a scientific report come back that nobody can read and nobody understands. Again, it's a complete waste of time. So the reports have to be made simple enough that people get the concept of what you did and how the intervention's been performed. But the question should be, how do you feel now? And if they feel good and they feel positive, or they felt the intervention happen, many clients feel the energy change. When we come into the field and we disconnect, clear and remove things, they feel the change, normally instantly if they're awake. So this type of work should be a very quick feedback vehicle. And if that's the case, then it should be easy to research. And this is, of course, where we're looking for the Academy, the Spirit Release Academy, now to start to perform extensive research on the interventions that are being performed by ourselves in spirit, because we want the feedback. The feedback is then in a position to be documented, narrated, and then of course we can start to use that to connect with other groups, other organizations, to provide efficacy of the work that we do. And this of course is where young Terence was very good. He did document 1,000 cases. He provided the narrative, he provided the database and the data set, and therefore from that he was able to springboard into the efficacy. And we know the efficacy model is around 80%. So out of every 10 people that have our intervention performed from a spiritual perspective, 8 of them would feel the positive, conclusive change, and 2 may either feel nothing or maybe a benign experience for them. And those 2 people, of course, are the people we need to look at from a research perspective to see what didn't work or why it didn't work. Did they have exhaustive mental health problems that are not fixed? If it's a spiritual intervention, which of course is what we do, if the person has a spiritual problem, then the spiritual intervention should work. So there should be a positive change. If the person has a problem that's not spiritually based, it could be a chemistry-based problem. They could have depression or something coming from their chemistry, maybe from substances they've taken. So a spiritual intervention is not going to provide a positive outcome for people that have that issue. But if the problem is a spiritually based source of problem, then of course the intervention should show positive change. And this is what we need to research and find. I know that there are people on this call that are listening that are very well located from a research perspective in the Academy that are going to start to move this forward. And as we look forward, what we're expecting to see, when I say we, myself and the team that I work with, we're expecting to see this research talked about in years and years to come, that this is a pivotal point in documented scientific and spiritual research overlaid together. Because of course we have Dr. Palmer, we have other people in spirit that were either doctorate level or research level people. Dr. Alan Sanderson, one of young Terence's very good friends, is also part of the team in spirit, and he was the head of psychiatry in the United Kingdom. So we've got a very exhaustive list of people from a spiritual perspective behind the work. And all we need to do now basically is to collate the information, create more information, and then we need to publish these data sets out into effectively the wider audience. And as I say, there will be books written about this group of people that are doing this work, and this will be talked about in years and years to come, because it's imperative for the human progression to talk about these levels of negative interference that are happening across the planet, in every country, in every race, in every culture, across every religion. There is this level of negativity that needs to be exposed, and we need to talk about how we clear it, and we know how to clear it, and we know it works. So it's just a case of bringing all of these components together, really, and bringing them into a space that they can be explained very easily and documented. So this is the question with the reports, really. Too much information causes more problems than it's worth, and I don't think you can have too little information. As young Andrew said, the people that received reports that said the intervention had happened and was successful actually went on to make better progress than people that were given information. So from a research perspective, we could also look at that. And that's something that I will make sure that young Andrew and Jono have added to their already quite surmountable list of things to do, because of course it's an interesting topic and interesting conversation. So hopefully that answers the questions. Obviously, to come back to the start of this conversation, young Jane is at the helm of the input of your mails, your questions, client questions, and correspondence. And she does a very sterling job keeping that wheel turning, keeping everything working. But what we do need to do, as this work starts to percolate out into a wider audience, one that's not spiritual, because at the moment, of course, you must remember, most of you have a spiritual background. You understand the concepts. You may not understand everything, but you're certainly in the loop. Now, can you imagine having these conversations about discarnate spirits and entities and portals in someone's etheric field to someone who's not spiritual? They won't understand the words. let alone the conversation. And they certainly won't understand the conversation around the intervention that needs to be employed to bring them back to sovereignty. But what they will understand is how they feel. And these are the people that are going to be open to this type of work as we move forward. People that don't understand what's happening, they don't really want to, they don't really need to, but they'll understand how they feel. And that, of course, is the core component from our perspective. And I know that I've said before, part of our job, as the spiritual team that I work with, is, of course, to bring the vibration of planet Earth up. And we're doing that by changing your vibration, by clearing each and every one of you. Your vibration ascends, and that means the vibration of the planet collectively moves up. And this is my core task, really. So I will say good day to you there. I think we've covered the conversation, explained things in a very appropriate manner. So thank you very much for the opportunity to converse and talk, and hopefully you've enjoyed the content of this week's Chen Chat podcast and conversation. And we will look forward to speaking again next week. Good day. Okay, so I'm back. 51 minutes. Not bad, not bad. So that must have been about a 25-minute chat. So I actually talked longer than Chen, I think, in that particular session, which was good. Okay, so let's just go to the comments and see if there's any there that we need to reply to. Suki's saying, of course, made a massive difference for me and keeping me sober. And so Suki's about to join us next week, actually. So you're in for an amazing week. In fact, the weather's going to be great as well. It's supposed to be really sunny, so the castle's fab because we've got big skylights and the sun sort of floods through. So you're in for a treat next week, which will be good. Myself and John are looking forward to meeting you guys that are coming on that course. So that's going to be fantastic. If anyone's interested in joining us, the in-person SRA course runs next week. So still time to join if you want to come along. All the information is available at the SRA website, or you can send us an email, contact@spiritleaseacademy.com, or obviously you can speak to myself and Jono behind the scenes. And on the SRA website, there is a book a call with Jono, actually. So there's a button that you can click, which brings the calendar up, and you can pop yourself in for a 15-minute call to talk about things, if there's things you want to talk about, or the payment aspects and things. People are using that to contact us. So feel free to do that. Good to see you, Najir, I think, as well. And I think with that, it probably concludes this week's session. So thanks for joining, folks. Hopefully you've enjoyed the sesh. If you did, put a thumbs up to us on social media. It's always good to know what you like. And if you've got things you want us to talk about, rather than Chen deciding every week, as he tends to, then drop us an email. So contact at andy-poulter.co.uk. As we say, Jane will pick up the emails. So if you've got things that you'd like us to add to the list of conversation, or something you want us to cover, or things that you don't understand that you think other people would be interested to hear and know, drop us a thing. We want to be kind of open, approachable, and we do our best really to accommodate as many people in any way that we can. And as we've said, both websites, so my website and the SRA website, has bots on there with lots of information that you can spend some time talking to if you're into talking to bots, which I know that for me, actually, I know like most people don't like talking to a bot, but I actually quite like it because, I think we've all got time constraints. If I can go to a website and literally fire up the bot and just ask a load of questions and get some answers and things, then I kind of prefer that rather than trying to get into correspondence with someone over social media or messenger or all the other ways that we try and do those things. So the self-service kind of method, I think, is quite valuable for some people. Some people obviously like to chat and have the kind of personal thing. I'm kind of more the other way, I guess. But then we're all different, which of course is good. Hi, Mimi. Thanks for joining. Coming late, but you can watch this. Obviously, it's recorded, so we'll pop the recordings up quite quickly after this stream is finished. Okay, guys, we'll take care and we'll catch you again next week.